Hello and welcome to the best video game you've never played, the podcast where I, stand-up and improv comedian Lewis Dunn, invite a guest on to bring on a video game that I have never played. I then play it, invite them on, and we have a conversation about whether or not it's the best video game you've never played. This week's guest is Jack Bernhardt. Jack Bernhardt is a fantastic comic writer. He's written for shows like The News Quiz, The Amazing World of Gumball, and he even writes articles for The Guardian, as well as doing some of his own work with sketch troupes, including Sad Faces, which is how I know him, because I thought they're an amazing sketch troupe that I saw in Edinburgh, and that's how I ended up getting to know Jack. He also appears on things like the Taskmaster podcast. He has inadvertently become the Taskmaster podcast's statistician. So if you're a fan of Taskmaster and listen to that podcast, here's Jack in another context. He also presents another podcast called the Football Book Club podcast, where they read footballers' books and tear them to shreds, as it turns out that the greatest writers of our generation don't primarily play football. But Jack has come onto this podcast to discuss a video game that he loves, so let's find out what it is. Hello, Jack. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Lewis Dunn?
I am doing very well, Jack. I don't know if you know this, but I've recently come into the ownership of a nice Caribbean archipelago. It's very nice.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've been running it for the past couple of weeks, seeing how I can get on with it. And it's been a lovely time. And while I've been doing that, I've been playing the video game that you recommended to me.
Oh, well, now see, that's unfair, isn't it? Because that's already set you up against real life. Because it just turns out that Tropico 5 is that's what you've just described. So I don't know.
More or less.
Yeah.
So Jack, why don't you introduce us to Tropico 5? What is Tropico 5?
Okay, Tropico 5. Imagine you're playing Sim City, but it's 150 years in the past, and it's slightly racist.
I'm so glad you've said that up front, because that's in my notes, but we'll loop back to that.
Good. Don't worry about that. Basically, Tropico 5, you play a dictator initially who has taken over an island. You play El Presidente, who has become the colonial master of an island, effectively, and you have to build up the population's wherewithal and ability and economic powerhouse level in order to claim independence from your colonial colonial powers. I suppose it's called the crown that you're up against. After which point you get catapulted into World War One, World War Two. You have to choose whether which side you're on in the Cold War, whether you'll be pro-America or pro-USSR, and then after that, you're into the modern era, where you could do whatever you want. You can start a space program as a small Caribbean island. It is, in many ways, if you did GCSE history. And it was the unit that was, I guess it was like AQA. It was the unit that was like the one that mentioned the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is the game for you. You will have so many like moments where you'll go, oh wow, it's so clever. They're making references to the Cuban Missile Crisis while making wildly inappropriate jokes. It's brilliant.
Yes, so I think possibly this is the thing that's most appealing about Tropico 5, is that the setting's pretty good, right? I don't think I can think of another series that's got a similar setup, as it were. Like you mentioned SimCity, but SimCity is sort of very deliberately sort of apolitical, or at the very least is sort of like it's sort of this sort of clean aluminium brushed version of society where it's like, you've made a building and it is nice and good for you.
Okay, so this is a segue. This is a slight tangent. I could never get it so that I could never tax my citizens in SimCity. So I used to get I used to go bankrupt almost immediately because I'd put up like statues of myself, and then have no way to pay for them. The mechanics of this game I at least understand. That is the bar, by the way. The mechanics of the game I understand.
I do find that interesting, because I feel like that is possibly an advantage you had over me while playing Tropico 5. So this is the thing with Tropico. So you're right, that setting, the thing I think that separates Tropico 5 from something like SimCity And I might be wrong, because I don't know if I've ever played SimCity for an enormous amount of time, but I've certainly played a lot of games like SimCity.
Yes.
Which is that the thing with Tropico 5 is that you are playing the dictator of the island, and not necessarily an omnipotent god who can't be deposed.
Yes, see that's an interesting aspect, because it's not like Age of Empires or SimCity. You have to have elections every 5 years, or rather you can have elections. If you don't have elections, then there's a chance you'll be overthrown. So
Yes.
there's a peril there that does get quite after a while it can get quite upsetting. You're midway through and your approval ratings are going down and you have no money, and there are people being like, oh, can we have elections? And you're like, shut up, I'm trying to build an airport. Why isn't anyone where are all of my workforce? Why are they not going to the airport? So that's quite fun. I quite enjoy that level of stress. The thing that I also find, so you're right, you don't play an omnipotent god, but inexplicably you have children, but also you've lived for 150, 160, maybe 200 years. I think I got to the year 2050 recently, not recently, but when I was playing it last. And like, first of all, technology hasn't improved very much between now and 2050, which is disappointing. And also, like, I'm just still alive. I've been alive for 200 years. No one seems bothered about this in the game.
No, the dynasty hasn't tried to. I mean, I don't know about you. This is a very strange thing about Tropico 5, is when you boot up the game, the first thing you do, more or less, is you design your dictator.
Yeah.
And it's done in a very sort of bare bones character creator sort of a way. Like, you can swap out the costumes, and I think maybe you can even you can do some very minor editings like the voice and things. It's not a huge level of detail, but what you learn immediately is that it largely doesn't matter, because you are never going to see this character model ever again throughout the course of your playing of the game.
I think it's so that you can, in your mind, think, this is who I am, this is what I look like. I think that's really just for your benefit at that moment. The game is not going to interact with that at all, but not at all. Lewis, it's thinking about you. It's thinking about your character.
Yes, and it is quite interesting. Again, so the thing is, for this podcast series, you've tapped into a rich vein of the type of game I don't normally play, which is this kind of strategy city management game. So this is, at the very least, the third of its type, kind of the fourth if you count another game that I've played, another strategy game, which I would argue is more combat-based. But this is the third game of its type I've played, which is, you must build a city and manage the resources, or else you shall be deposed. Like this. So I've played Stronghold, which is sort of possibly the originator of this whole genre. I've played Frostpunk, which, good news for you, was one of the best video games I'd never played. It did reach that rank. So there is potential in this genre for me to go, I love this.
Was Frostpunk also inexplicably racist?
It wasn't. It was actually. It was
surprising.
It was surprisingly touching. Was actually the thing Frostpunk ended up being.
This is not surprisingly touching, I will say.
No, it's not. Unless what it's doing is touching you inappropriately.
Oh.
And this is this. So here we are with Tropico 5. And so what I've learned about playing games in this genre, for me, is there is a consistent problem that I have with all of them, which is that there comes a point where in the campaign, usually about 2/3 into sort of a campaign mission or whatever, where I go, I don't know what I did wrong.
Yeah.
Where I'm staring at a disapproval rating. Only like 38% of the population likes me. The rebels have turned around. There's now a military coup, and I'm going, but all I did was ask you to grow pineapples. Why are you so mad at me?
Do you know what, Lewis? That's on you, okay? Because if it was a good place to grow pineapples, it would have come up green saying "grow pineapples here."
I did. I click in the appropriate places.
Okay, here's something I found out recently about the game that it tells you nowhere, but you have to go online to find out. If you draw, because in the game you have to have roads everywhere,
yes,
between your farms and stuff. If you make the roads not straight, that will lead to traffic jams that will ultimately destroy your city.
Right. So I feel like this inherently taps into the problem I have with this genre.
So, okay, are you telling me, just so I can get this right, are you telling me that it's unrealistic somehow that
No,
this game...
no, it's not a realism problem. No. I'm magically building stuff from the sky. We're not into realism.
Oh, no, okay, so this game where you build pineapple farms, the fact that the whole infrastructure is ruined by slightly curvy roads, that seems pretty realistic to me, man.
The problem I have with this entire genre, and it was something that Frostpunk was certainly a lot better at, though it also had issues with it, and was something that was a huge problem in Stronghold, and in Tropico persists, is I just don't know what it wants from me. I don't understand where I'm going wrong, what it is I was supposed to do to not end up in this situation. And, like, certainly something I found with... Something that happens in this game, stuff will... So one of the things you have to do is you have to set up trade routes with other nations. I quite like this mechanic because it sort of pops up on almost like, and it shows you the value of different like trade routes. So it's like, oh, the US want wool right now. That's worth $1,000 every time you export. Oh, Britain wants cocoa, but it's only $500 every time you export. And so you go, okay, so I'll build my economy around this trade route. And then you need to get a trade ship, and then every time you send out a trade ship, they can go and export more of the goods, and this is all fantastic. And it's hidden. It's a hidden button behind... You click on the dock, and then you click trade, and then this menu opens up that explains everything you need to do for the trade. And I was like, what? Why is it so hard?
Why wasn't that in the tutorial, huh? Why didn't your little buddy, I can't remember his name, El Presidente's little... pal. What's
his right-hand man.
His right-hand man.
He's like 12 years old mentally. He's just absolutely...
In my mind, and again, this is a tangent, it's a little bit like, you know the meerkats?
Yes, yeah.
You are as the owner of this island, you are Alexander, the head meerkat, and then the little guy who pops up being like, "Hello, Sergey." He's Sergey, his little assistant. That's how in my brain those two things are the same. Side note: if they made Tropico 5 with meerkats, it'd be a much better game.
I fear it'd be the same game because you're so far away from everything. They might as well be meerkats.
And actually, thinking about it, you'd never see yourself as a meerkat, which is really what you want.
It is what you want. Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, you're wrong, and the game is. I don't mind necessarily the idea of a game saying, "Look, there are going to be lots of extra rules and things that you have to go." For me, the game has a campaign version that tells you the basics. Which is, let's be honest, wild. It's a very, very strange campaign version. Arguably the weirdest campaign version of any game that I've played like it, where you are effectively trying to go through the world, but because they have to do this thing where they go through each, they start in colonial times, and then they move into World War I, and then they move into the Cold War. They have to kind of create a device that allows them to go back at some point. So there's a revelation halfway through as you're going through the campaign that actually you're working for... The person you're working for is evil and wants to blow up the world. But don't worry, you've got a guy with a time machine who has taken you back in time, so you start on another level. Yeah. It's mad. It's completely mad and quite unsatisfying, despite being the best video game that you've ever played.
Well, I didn't quite get that far. I did end up looking up what happened later in the game because I didn't quite get that far.
It's mad. It's really, really weird.
So that's the thing. Did you play through the campaign?
I think what I did is I played through the campaign. I think I might have got to the end of the campaign, or I think I, like you, got 2/3 of the way through. And no, I did actually. I'm looking at it now. I got the Pirate King. I exported gold to the Pirate King. I got to the Pirate King. It's yes, no, and then yes. So basically, I did the campaign version, but on the easiest level because I just wanted to see what the story was. Because I was kind of curious because I think I played Tropico 1 and 2. ages ago, like in the late 90s with my I don't know when I don't know, mate, Tropico probably didn't come out in the late 90s. Whenever the first Tropico came out, I played it with my friend and we were growing up, and like I'd go around to his house and get the music stuck in my head constantly, which you got to admit the soundtrack is pretty damn good.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Look, I'll be honest with you, there came a point where I would listen to podcasts while playing this game. Because I just look.
How dare you? Sir.
But look, so the thing I was curious about asking you, did you play the campaign? Is because I did. I went through the campaign missions largely because, as you suggest, my assumption with these kind of games is the campaign is like, look, here's basically some tutorials, here's some controlled missions, and then I always feel like with a game like Tropico 5, I'm like. That the proper way to play this game though is the sandbox, right? The whole point of this game is the sandbox, really, if we're being honest.
Yes, although once you get into so I recently replayed the sandbox version, and once you get into the modern era, you sort of run out of resources and your island kind of runs out of things to export, and so you basically die. But in many ways, that is, the situation we find ourselves now on the planet. So
yeah, it's a fairly bleak prophecy.
Fairly bleak, accurate prophecy, but with great music, like I say. But I was curious when playing Tropico 5 what the campaign would be like, and I think they do a good-ish job in making it just weird enough to... So the sandbox is the purest version of the game, but in a way, the campaign is the thing that makes me go, this game is completely unhinged, and makes very, very little sense.
Well, it has a very... I'm going to call it a very schoolboy sense of humour.
Yeah.
And which works in two directions. The first of which is, as you suggest, it is zany to the hilt. Mm-hmm. Like, it's by no means is this game taking itself seriously. All of the characters you meet are very extreme caricatures. There's like a version of Theodore Roosevelt who's like exactly the kind of caricature of a big, brash American president. You've got, as you say, your Sergei, who is sort of like hopelessly naive. And there's things like you do research in the game in order to get upgrades, and like you'll research the sickle, and then the flavor text you get when you research the sickle is, we found a sickle in a box, and you're like, how ridiculously thick are the people who work for me in this game? Occasionally,
but also that will make you annoyed because you'll be like, that took literally 3 years to get all those research points, and it was in a box. That's what you're telling me? It was in a box. But I again quite enjoyed that. And
occasionally, some of that flavor text drifts into the offensive.
Yes, I will. I'll agree with that. Sure, I'm not going to die on this hill. Sure.
Yeah, I don't think the thing that's so frustrating about it is that it's such a decision by the people who make it. Because the fact is, you could basically make this game without any flavor text, and literally have the pop-up just go, "You've now unlocked ranch improvements. You've now unlocked farm improvements." Mm-hmm. Like, they've layered the flavor text onto the game, and they've layered it on to give the game an atmosphere and a vibe. And the vibe of Tropico 5 is, well, hey, you're a dictator. What a zany, crazy time you're going to have. Whoops-a-daisy, are you oppressing your people, tee-hee? And it's supposed to be sort of like... It's a sort of... They know that the subject matter, if handled with too heavy a realism hand, actually becomes pretty bleak pretty quick.
Yeah.
And you couldn't... Like, they kind of realise we have to be satirical.
Yeah, I'd say that's true.
And the sort of... Their approach to satire is a sort of, popping a whoopee cushion under Castro. It's not necessarily a particularly deep or insightful satire.
The highest form of satire, I would argue.
It has, to my mind, and possibly this is a bit unfair to Grand Theft Auto, which I think is perhaps a little bit better, but I think it's satirical in the same way Grand Theft Auto is, in that you're like, this does technically qualify under the definition of satire. I would not use it as an example.
Now, okay, so that is true and fair, but I would argue that I don't necessarily want my OTT cartoonish dictatorial video game to have a level of biting satire.
Okay.
That I think it needs to be cartoonish. And it needs to walk that line, because I don't think it can be biting in a way that makes you actually think, because you've got way too much to do with your pineapples and your papaya fruit and trying to get the goddamn workers to go to the airport, even though they're right next to the airport, and they'll inexplicably go and build a nightclub for you instead. It's very irritating. I think it needs to strike a balance, and I think apart from when it gets really offensive, and there are a couple of bits where I was like, oh, that's rum, don't do that joke. Also, this game came out in 2014. It's not, you can't excuse it by going, it was a different time. It was
7 years ago was a different time.
It was a bit. It was sort of a different time. We could leave the house. That's a different
That's
time.
true. That's true. And we hadn't gone through the era of people being ironically offensive online, transitioning into genuine political outlook.
I wonder if that may have played a part in this, because there are quite a few things where you're like, that's a level of irony that maybe looking back on it, you'd be like, oh no, that's too far.
Someone thought that was okay. Actually, they didn't see the joke.
There may be some people who played this game and then immediately went on to the Donald.
It's exactly that.
Fair.
It's exactly that idea of that level of like, it's offensive, but we don't mean it, and you're like, not everyone playing knows that.
It's weird though, because I think that the subject I really enjoy the game as a stupid, cartoonish, over the top caricature of Cold War politics in particular. And I think they get it right when it comes to dealing with like Russia and dealing with the USA. That for me that's where it gets, that's the right level. I think before in The Crown, there's stuff about the British Empire being like jovially fun and silly and zany, which I think isn't appropriate.
But this is the thing. So I found it fascinating that it starts you as a colony of the Crown, because so if we talk about like the way in which we look at how gameplay and narrative combine. So this is the thing. Something with Tropico 5 that is something that I've really liked in Frostpunk as well, is that actually these things do match up in Tropico pretty strongly. It makes sense that you are the dictator of an island in a particular era. You are ordering certain things to do things, and it matches the story of what's going on in the game.
Yeah.
You know, you're not running around a maze eating pills and then they just go, congratulations, your island is better. You're doing things that make sense for a dictator of an island to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things they do that I think is quite, like, mechanically adds up the story is that the Crown are a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
The Crown turn up and they're like, we demand this of you, and you can't say no. And the Crown turn up and are just like, you know, they'll be like, oh, we want money, or they'll be like, name an animal after him, or something like that. It
is very annoying. And actually, the first bit where it says you can declare independence is a very satisfying moment.
Yeah.
Because the first thing you get is, I'll be able to do what I want now. Like, I'll be able to, I don't have to worry about, there's a timer that says this is how long your like colony is, like how long you'll be able to run this colony for, that sort of runs out. It's very satisfying when you can suddenly go like, shut up the Crown, I'm my own man.
And it also feeds into that thing if you go, yes, shut up the Crown, I'm now my own independent nation. And you very quickly learn that doesn't mean things are easier.
You immediately have to worry about the approval rating, which is something that I would argue is slightly... I suppose it is... I mean, it's realistic, but...
I really struggle to understand what moved the approval rating. Because I thought I was doing the thing that would improve the approval rating, which was give everyone good housing. And, like... You know, extra rations, everyone can eat more food, and I'm making sure there's a good food supply on the island, and they still hated me. And I was like, what are you... I've built you an opera house.
But I built you an opera house before I built a farm.
Yeah!
You should love that.
Opera house is apparently the first type of, like, entertainment you can build on the island. So I was like,
so
really?
Funny. The idea that
predates cinema. What?
Yeah, I guess you don't want to go to like a bawdy tavern. No, okay, cool. Opera house it is.
Opera house it is.
Sure. That was there's the happiness button, and you can go into each section.
And I don't understand what they want.
So,
which is maybe why I'm a bad dictator.
you gotta know what your people want, really. I for a while, when I went to sandbox mode, I think I turned down the difficulty and then just worked through every single need of my people, and that was quite satisfying. So you could like extra rations would go up, or like finding the balance between people who like religion and people who like free speech, which is an interesting thing for those two things to be up against each other. Yeah, and like there's one that is really weird, which is entertainment. And if you get into the Cold War, you can have stadiums and I don't know if you can have stadiums. You can have like cabaret bars. And cinemas, as you say, and like various bits of entertainment. Before then, everyone's entertainment level is really low, so you just have to pack the place with restaurants.
Okay,
that will make the entertainment levels go up, because I was struggling with this. I was like, I'm going to be overthrown because my people aren't entertained enough. So I just like every single, if there wasn't a mine there would be a restaurant. It would go mine, farm, power station, restaurant. Like, I don't know what the job situation in my island was ridiculous by the end. I think
everyone was just serving each other.
90% of the people would have been going out to eat because the houses didn't have kitchens and would be served by each other. Mad.
You've basically got a series of outsourced kitchens for one another. And they just...
yeah, they're like, okay, do you want to eat at my restaurant tonight, or do you want to eat at your restaurant?
Yeah. You can't eat at your own restaurant. You have to do... All the restaurants work in 1 hour shifts and everyone moves down the street.
This is the only way the economy's going to work, okay?
We have the same money, and then I pass it to you, and then you pass me food, and then you go down the street.
And crucially, it's the same restaurant. You can't customize the restaurant at all. It's the same wooden, like, tiki hut restaurant.
Yes,
presumably serving the same food. I think in that sense, it's quite therapeutic when you can kind of like work out what everyone needs and go, okay, how do I fix what you need? When it gets problematic is when you say as everything starts to fall apart, and it becomes very hard to manage. There's a sweet spot there when you've got your power stations all working. Everyone's got electricity. Everyone's got heating. Every single person has at least 5 restaurants. You have. I think I had the Olympics twice.
Oh wow! I didn't know you could get the Olympics.
You can get that's the other cool thing is you have enough stadiums you can get the Olympics, and then it says like, the Olympics are happening. Congratulations, you're hosting the Olympics. This tiny, tiny island is inexplicably hosting the Olympics. And they say, if you have, depending on how you've built your island, effectively, you'll get certain benefit. Like you'll do better in certain events. So, like, I think I had maybe you have to choose which ones you go for. I had loads of work, like warehouse men, because I really wanted to build things, and I was getting very annoyed with the infrastructure being so slow, so I built about 7 warehouses.
Right.
And that is apparently not what you do, I found out later online. But it meant I had way too many warehouses per capita and warehouse workers per capita, and they're all apparently really good weightlifters. So I think I won like 7 gold medals in weightlifting. It was brilliant.
Well, I never got to that mechanic. I fear this is part of the problem with Tropico, is it's also one of these games that you play for hundreds of hours and stuff still happens and stuff still ticks over, and I've not been able to quite give it that level of attention.
I think that's what Tropico, and I think that is the crucial part of why it's so good, is that it sort of forces you to play for hours and hours on end. And keep in mind, I was playing on a PS4. So the interface was not great, and like I only worked out I could zoom in maybe about 3 hours in. For a long time, I was going like, "This is a very small island."
I think it's a testament to the fact that you played this game on PS4 and still enjoyed it, because goodness knows I couldn't bear. I'm playing this game on computer, and there's like basic things in this game that are missing from a lot, like. To scroll the screen, you have to move your mouse all the way to the edge of the screen, or use the arrow keys on the keyboard. And I'm like, this is a strategy game from the 90s. Yep. In this, like even games now, a lot of the games I play now, like you middle click or you right click, and you can move the whole map straight away. You don't have to drift to the edge like this. Which is such
nostalgic
a minor thing. It's such a minor thing.
That old way of living.
But this is the thing, is it backs up my point from earlier, which is just, there's just things in the game, like, you can figure out how to zoom in for hours. You've just told me about a list of, just a list of demands from the people, which is exactly what I was like, I don't understand what the people want. What do they want from me? And you're telling me, no, there is a menu in the game that tells you exactly what to do. It's just, I didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't tell you how to do things.
Sergey thought that you didn't need to know that. You didn't need to.
Or maybe he did tell me, but the tutorials are boring and dense, and you just get on with it.
Hey, they're not boring and dense. They're racist.
They're also boring and dense.
Fun.
It's just I get why, if you are into, once you know how to play Tropico 5, once either through trial and error experience or sheer bloody mindedness of clicking on every icon and seeing what it does, it will probably be great. It would probably be the kind of thing that you can waste hours on and have a good time. Like the sort of definition of a game to me that is like this sort of strategy game that you waste hours on is Civilization.
Yeah.
I love Civilization, and one of the reasons I really love Civilization is that I largely do not understand what is going on, but it doesn't really matter.
Sure.
Like the game of Civilization in particularly when you play against the nice easy AI, which I do because I don't want to try the hard ones, because my version of Civilization 5 won't let me load save games. So when I play Civilization 5, I have to finish it in one sitting.
That is an upsetting and very stressful situation you put yourself into there.
No, because when I sit down to play it, I'm like, today is Civilization.
Today I will live the existence of all man.
I'm like, today I'm doing the history of India. Here we go. I'm going to build loads of roads. And like that, and the thing that I love about Civilization is you basically pick something that you want to do, either a military force or economic or science or whatever. You focus on it, you crack on, and there are other things going on in the game that are a big deal that you can't necessarily fully ignore. But you can, once you get back to your focus, you carry on and you're fine. The thing with Tropico is that it wants you to keep track of a lot of things and hide a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So you have to keep track of your money, you have to keep track of your income, importing and exporting goods to meet particular criteria. That's fine. I'm okay at that part of the game. I'd go into debt, but I did it because I knew money was coming in, and then I'd frequently, at the peak of my, civilization, have good money, which I would then immediately reinvest into farms, factories, etc.
Yes.
Great. That side of the game I like, and I can get on with. Then there's the popularity side, which I clearly did not understand and did not know how to deal with, and was just running around building mansions going, you people live like kings, vote for me.
That is a bit that I didn't understand, is I would have thousands of mansions and then there'll be like shacks, and I'd be like, yeah, just get in the mansion, guys.
Go and live in the mansion.
Just go live in the mansion. But in a way, isn't that realistic? And it isn't.
No.
But isn't that whimsical?
No! There is no whimsy in my frustration.
I'm going to be honest. I have two tactics here. One is to say it's realistic. The other one is to say it's whimsical.
Yes, and these are contradictory stances, and you know it.
I'll pick and choose depending on what's. I am a dictator. Okay, I don't need to listen to you. I don't need the popularity of your argument to seep through on me.
But here's the thing, Jack. Now there's another side to this game, which I did not get that into, but I could immediately tell was going to be my downfall if I didn't keep getting overthrown by military coups, which was the diplomacy side.
Oh, I love the diplomacy side. It's great.
But again, here is yet another metric that I'm not fully aware how to control.
Wow.
That's just ticking away in the background quietly until one day it blows up and there's nothing. By the time I know it's a problem, I can't stop it.
And wouldn't you say that's exactly how World War I and II started? So
no,
isn't that whimsical? I mean, realistic. Yes, Sure, I agree. There's no fully. Again, there is. I think there is a menu. If you click on the embassy and then go through various sub things, you can find a menu that says like, "Why does the EU hate me?" And it's something stupid like, "You don't have enough phone boxes," and so you have to build some or like a metro, and you're like, "Well, I can't build metros yet. What's going on?" They're like, "Okay, well, we hate you." We're very angry at your situation. The one that I liked is if you do Russia, if you just build enough vodka and like alcohol and distilleries, they love you. That's fine.
Oh, they just see you as an extension of them. Is that it?
They're like, okay, great. Well, thanks. We'll just take that alcohol and off you go. And like, but if you have too many cathedrals, they don't like you. I think in the Cold War and no other time, obviously.
Well, that makes sense, of course, because obviously the whole idea of the communist regime was very anti-religion.
Again, it's teaching you things.
Well, yeah, and these are the things that add up that I think are nice about the game. Is it does have that marriage of mechanics and narrative that I like. Like one thing that popped up that I thought was very entertaining was it goes, Prohibition's going to kick in America. Let's build a rum distillery.
Yep. and then I think don't you then get you have to trick. There's something like you have to trick the Pope.
You have to trick. I did not get to. You have to trick the Pope.
I think you have to trick the Pope into. Oh God, what is it? I think you have to ban. Oh, if you want the Pope to come, you have to ban. Oh God, what is it? I think you have to ban No, it's either abortions or like contraception. But then I think once he comes, you can then put it back on again. And he's like, "Oh, I love this island! Hooray! I'm actually really in favor of abortions and contraception." And it's a sort of.
I mean,
fun,
that's superb.
It's a fun joke about how the Pope is corrupt. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, but this is the kind of game that, of course, when we're talking about the corruption of the Catholic Church, the best way to portray that is through, racist caricatures. That's obviously the way to do it.
I mean, look, like I say, this game will either charm the pants off of you or it will radicalize you. Those are the two things it will do.
I do want. This is the thing. The thing that's kind of going to be a shame about this episode, Jack, and it's just something I can't get past. Is that I like the idea of Tropico 5. I like the idea of you play as a Banana Republic dictator, and it's supposed to be satirical and lighthearted, but at the same time, it is. As you say, if you're a fan of 20th century history, you will recognise things happening. You will find them entertaining. There's a little bit of that sort of, role-playing element of, well, what do I do during the Cuban Missile Crisis? What can I do to make things better or worse? World War II happens. You have to choose whether to ally with the Axis or the Allies. And you're like, well, maybe I'll sell some cloth to the Axis. See what's it like to be with the bad guy team? And the answer is they send you $2,500 and that's it.
Yeah, I was quite annoyed, but in a way, it's quite a good metaphor for not siding with the Nazis.
I guess it's largely. This is the thing. A lot of Tropico 5 as a game is sort of window dressing on a algorithm, more or less. Like it's dressing up the same strategy game you've played in medieval times, you've played in Roman times, maybe you've even played a future version, and it's like, here comes the dictator version. And the most interesting, unique element to the Tropico thing is it's like, no, but you're playing a dictator, and, you have a private Swiss bank account that you have to, siphon money off into. Like, Tropico 5 has a mechanic where you being a corrupt leader is part of how the game works. Except...
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this develops later. I never found a good reason to be corrupt.
Yeah, I didn't either, and it's quite. I think there is a reason. I think there must be a reason at some point. You must be able to do something with it.
There's a mission in the campaign that requires it.
Yeah, but it's thin. It's not. There's no.
Yeah.
Again, I'm really shooting myself in the foot here. But. The Swiss Army thing is something. Not the Swiss Army. The Swiss bank account that you have. It is one of those things where they'll say we can either give you $50,000 or we can put $10,000 in your Swiss bank account. And I'm always like, well, obviously I'm going to go with the $50,000 because I can actually spend that.
Yeah, I know what to do with that.
I know what to do with that money. Whereas the $10,000 is that's just going to sit in my account. And maybe it's a thing to say that personal wealth is pointless and that really we should be all spending our money for the public good. Maybe that's what they're getting at.
You could see it as that, but I don't feel like the game mechanic, again, it doesn't back this up necessarily. I think you can use the Swiss bank account money to buy new clothes for your dictator, a person you never see again.
Yeah, or their children.
Or the children. I think there's specific prompts sometimes where it's like you can send your children off to university in other countries, and you can use money from the Swiss account as opposed to money from the public funds, which
That's
I think
actually quite useful. And then you can send them off to like Oxford, and they come back, and I think they hate you once you do that, which is fair. Again, you're a pretty terrible person in this game.
But you don't. This is the thing, is that I kind of. So again, one of the things. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep comparing it because they're quite similar games. Frostpunk has these mechanics.
Your precious Frostpunk.
My precious Frostpunk, because I thought it was really good. Frostpunk was about being a dictator and it being hard. Frostpunk was like, look, this decision you're going to make is going to devastate people, but if you don't do it, you're going to use up the resources and you need them, otherwise people will die. Mm-hmm. Tropico 5 has no such conflicts. Tropico 5 basically wants you to be corrupt for its own sake, and that's not a good... Like, the reason that you would be a corrupt leader of a country is because you personally would have a better experience. Part of me wants Tropico 5 almost, and this would be almost a different game design entirely. I would love it if Tropico 5, when you start the game, has a really annoying interface, and the way that you make the interface better is through corruption.
That's a nice idea. Or like the game, you could win things through the game if you became incredibly corrupt. Like they would send like plush clothes to your house and like really nice slippers or like a heater. Yeah,
I mean that would be that's a very different proposition that I don't think is sustainable.
That's going to bankrupt them immediately.
But it's sort of the idea that there should be some mechanical reward for being corrupt that matters, that makes it so that you, when that prompt comes up, 50,000 for your citizens, 10,000 to you, you go 10,000 to me means that I will get like a warning when farms are about to be less productive, and I can counter it, or something like that.
That's clever. Like in-game usage, like things that make the game easier.
Yes,
clever.
Explicitly make it easier for you, the player, but annoy the people. This is the thing. I'm now designing a different video game.
Oh, but you know what? I like it.
And I think this is the problem with Tropico 5, is that, again, I want to like it. I love the pitch. I don't think it follows through on the pitch.
The problem is that it's inspired you to create an even better game. Okay, sure. That's a problem. a game that could make you thousands of pounds.
I have no Oh, wow, thousands. I have no...
All right. Wow, someone's doing very well for themselves.
I'm not. I'm just... I would have thought you'd have at least pitched tens of thousands, not like...
Well, thousands is, tens of thousands is included in thousands. Look, I'm not making any big promises. This game could sell well. It could do very badly.
The thing is, if I was capable of making video games, I would, but I'm not, so I don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
And instead I play other people's games and go and sit here on the sidelines. Just go, could be better if you did this. Like, it's not...
Yeah, the music's not very good.
I didn't say it wasn't very good. I said it was fine. I said it was fine.
Okay, imagine... Oh, it's so good. It's like, basically, it's the music you get at Nando's.
But no, you come in with that's really good.
Yeah, that's it reminds you of being in a Nando's, but you don't have to eat any chicken.
Sorry, for you is the ideal Nando's experience just a compilation album?
Yeah, no chicken. I don't want any of that chicken. I just want a nice room with nice, annoying music.
And I'll get my own cutlery.
Yeah, I'll pay at the beginning, and that's it.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but this is... Well, I don't... Look, unless you've got something else to say about Tropico 5, this is the thing with it. I just largely found it a bit boring.
Okay, so I think I would... I think you hit on something there when you were saying that it's a game that if you get into the mechanics of it, it's almost a game that it's basically like a game of sunk cost. You spend so long learning how it works that after a while
That's such a bad pitch.
Yeah. Hang on, maybe something better is going to come out. You don't know. You invest so much time in learning how it works and learning how all the systems works that it becomes quite satisfying to have a barely sustainable island that is working for you. That becomes quite satisfying. The bare minimum becomes quite satisfying because it's such a slog to get to that point.
So have you look, there's, like I say, this is obviously a big genre of games. Have you ever played Roller Coaster Tycoon?
No, I have not.
Right. So this is sort of a strange comparison. They're not quite the same. Roller Coaster Tycoon is more of a business simulator thing, and Tropico is kind of an island management thing. But the thing that's really satisfying at the end of Roller Coaster Tycoon, when you're completing missions and doing stuff, is by the end of it, you go, I have a theme park that I built.
Yeah.
Whereas with Tropico 5, the thing I found when I pulled back and looked at the things was I have a lot of sugar and cotton plantations. It doesn't necessarily have the same...
Okay, but like I say, at some point, you'll work your way through it, you'll put down several rebel alliances, you'll be the bad guy, kill a few people, but at some point you'll look back and go, I have quite a tall hotel, 2 stadiums, and a supermarket that no one wants to work in. That is pretty satisfying.
So here we are now at what I can only look. I don't feel like I have anything left to say about Tropico 5. I've
got a good feeling about your verdict.
That's what well, do you?
I've got a really strong feeling that it's going to be great.
So, is Tropico 5 the best video game I've never played?
I think it's going to be yes. I'm almost positive it's going to be yes.
I'm really sorry, Jack, but I don't think it is.
You think it is? Oh,
I don't. You. I think it's a no for now.
Oh well, it's interesting you said that, Lewis, because like I say, this is a dictatorship, and I don't accept your idea. So
that's such a shame because I'm in charge of the military, so expect my tanks at your door.
I've got several weightlifters. Bring it on.
Look, thank you for bringing it on. I will admit it was fun for me to do because it was something that I was like, it sort of was in the little corners of my video game periphery, and I was like, yeah, that might be quite good. And now that I've played it, I'm sorry to say that it is basically exactly the game I thought it would be.
That's fair.
I don't feel like it subverted my expectation. I will say, if you like this game, and you'll be annoyed because I feel like I'm talking about the person I left you for, but go have a look at Frostpunk.
Oh God, you and your insufferable Frostpunk.
Because that game has it's such a more compressed and sleeker version of this more or less the same game, except the setting's even bleaker.
I don't want bleak. I want men who can't find sickles in boxes, and really naff jokes. That's what I want.
They are naff, aren't they? That's the thing. That's the word for it.
They're charmingly naff. And only rarely do they veer into offensively naff.
But thank you very much for coming on, Jack.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight, even if I disagree with your argument. And I suppose we do have to have like a battle now, like a fight, like a war.
Look, I'm going to let you know the majority of games that come on this podcast end up in the category of not the best video game I've ever played. So there is a line. So you will have to find the back of the line before you can.
Okay.
Before you can come beat me up.
Jeepers. God, you're a popular guy.
Yeah, I invite people onto the show to say, bring on a game you like, and then I tell you what is bad.
Excellent concept.
Oh, thanks again. Cheers. Well, that was Jack with Tropico, and despite his best efforts, sadly, I just don't think I can say it's one of the best video games I've never played. I think if you're a fan of the genre, you'll find a lot to love with Tropico 5, but for me personally, it just didn't quite get past some of the things I find very frustrating about the genre. If you're a fan of Jack on the podcast, why not check out his other podcast, The Football Book Club? If you go to thefootballbookclub.com, you can find details about the podcast there and how to download it. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe to it, you can review it, and you can share it. Please do all of those things. Also, a quick note, Any Suggestions Doctor will have finished its 2021 leg of its tour, but the 2022 leg of the tour starts in February next year, so go to anysuggestionsimprov.co.uk if you fancy seeing an improvised Doctor Who parody. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Stay safe.